I'm going to say this at risk of my job, Kelly, but what President Trump is doing is insane.
Trump is now talking about further retaliation against the EU. The EU retaliated yesterday against the aluminium and steel tariffs. Trump's now talking about putting 200% tariffs on champagne, alcohol, core European products.
So do you expect that those prices will go higher? I mean, when a company has to pay more for its input, will they typically pass it on to the consumer, do you think?
I think eventually they're going to have to.
Yeah.
Well, it appears there is trouble in billionaire paradise as Donald Trump went on another completely off-the-rails rant, this time against the Wall Street Journal, owned, of course, by none other than once Treasury associate and accomplice in enabling fascism, Rupert Murdoch. Trump railed against the Wall Street Journal yesterday after the paper revealed that business leaders were being two-faced about the president's disastrous tariffs, Trump going as far as to call the publication owned by Rupert Murdoch globalist.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
The Democratic messaging actually has been going pretty well. So talking about they're trying to cut your health care while giving tax breaks to the rich. If you look at the latest Quinnipiac poll, there's over 50% disapproval of Trump himself, how he's handling the economy, how he's handling the federal workforce, how he's handling Ukraine and Russia, how he's handling trade with Mexico, how he's handling trade with Canada. So basically, he's underwater on everything. And a lot of that is due to the fact that Democrats are out there at town halls, like Jason Crow, for instance, held a town hall. He's a representative in Colorado. 1,300 people showed up to that. And there was tons of social feed that came out of that. And we know about the Republicans having town halls and then having to run away or asking questions like, what do you think of Doge? And expecting people to say something positive, and then they're screaming.
Now, his meltdown appears to be in response to either an article published Thursday in the Wall Street Journal airing the concerns of American business leaders who have been forced to come to terms with just how disastrous Donald Trump's tariffs are for the US market. Or he could also be extra salty at the journal's editor-in-chief Emma Tucker appearing on Fox to rub salt in the wounds.
And we saw each other at the World Economic Forum in January.
Yes, in Davos, right?
In Davos back then. And do you remember the mood then was so upbeat? And the American chief execs that were there were all so excited. The talk was all of deregulation, growth, no tax rises, boom, boom, America. And Europe was absolutely stuck in the doldrums, very unhappy. But it's very interesting how that mood has shifted pretty much since all the tariffs started coming in. I think businesses realizes now Trump is serious about this. But the problem they've got is that they're being imposed in a very haphazard way, and that's creating so much instability. Then along comes your interview, and Trump refuses to rule out a recession. He's talking in a kind of no pain, no gain kind of way. And I think, chief execs, businesses, they're slightly floundering because they don't know where to look now.
Yeah, and one of the main stories in the Journal today, CEO frustrations with Trump over trade mount in private. So the president has been speaking to lots of CEOs this week. He was at the Business Roundtable. And of course, lots of CEOs told me at the Business Council, they're not sure where things are going. What do you think the conversation is in boardrooms today in terms of how these companies are going to adjust to this new policy of tariffs?
Well, I think one thing's very clear from our reporting is they're reluctant to say anything publicly. I think that story that is about this roundtable of business people. There were some sort of informal polls where the chief execs that were there said the stock market would have to drop by 20% for them to talk out. So I think they've accepted that the tariffs are here, and what they want to know now is which ones are staying, which ones are going to be dialed back. Is there going to be further retaliation? And I mean, just before I came on, there was news that Trump is now talking about further retaliation against the EU. The EU retaliated yesterday against the aluminium and steel tariffs. Trump's now talking about putting 200% tariffs on champagne, alcohol, core European products.
So do you expect that those prices will go higher? I mean, when a company has to pay more for its input, will they typically pass it on to the consumer, do you think?
I think eventually they're going to have to.
Yeah.
They may not immediately. There may be some buffer there that they can absorb these prices. But over time, inevitably, I think we will see prices for certain goods go up.
And here's the thing, as I've said on previous videos, there's been a notable shift across Murdoch's mainstream manipulation networks, with more once trusted aides to the president in the form of just endless airtime praising his every decision, have decided to speak out against him.
President Trump buying a new car, while there are some folks who will see this clip at home and they are struggling with their retirement accounts down at the moment, uncertainty about work ahead.
Well, I think they're going to do great. I think our country had to do this. We had to go and do this. They've taken away, other countries have taken away our business. They've taken away our jobs. I did it initially very strongly against, as you know, China and some others in the first term. And it was a very successful term. We had no inflation. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. And then we had COVID.
And if you have different people in the administration giving different messages, I mean, the Commerce Secretary and the president are having different messages on the same day. That's not giving the market any sort of ease or certainty for investors. So I wouldn't be surprised if we have an even greater crash.
We should let Jonathan keep talking because the market's come back 50 points.
There you go. There you go.
But obviously, the Dow is 1,500 points below where it was when Donald Trump took office.
Yeah.
That's not a good look.
And not just on Fox, by the way, but CNBC's Steve Leisman went as far as to say that he's just putting his job on the line to speak the truth. And that truth is that Trump's economic policies are insane, which they are.
I'm going to say this at risk of my job, Kelly, but what President Trump is doing is insane. It is absolutely insane. It is about the 8th reason we've had for the tariffs. And now he's saying he's putting 50% tariffs on Canada unless they agree to become the 51st state. That is insane. There is just no other way of describing it. And the trouble, Kelly, is that it shows there are no bounds around President Trump. This is very different from the first administration, where there were people around him who seemed to, I don't know what the word is, but smooth over some of the edges now. And the other thing that's not talked about, Kelly, is what's going on within the administration in terms of how they're treating the Constitution and laws. I think all of that is bad for the attraction of capital. And the gentleman from Bridgewater is 100% right. We need massive amounts of capital if we want to fund our deficits, pay for the things we want to pay for, sell our bonds, and have high stock prices. And it seems as if this administration is doing everything it can to chase foreign capital away.
Well, and we could go into the strategy of the insanity as a strategy in terms of our trading
Insanity
partners.
is not a strategy. I'm sorry. I'm with you, Kelly, in trying to look for silver linings. I'm a sunny person.
Not silver linings, tactics, right?
Some explanation for this other than insanity. I'm ready to accept it if you can come up with one.
And don't take my word for it. Go and speak to Mr. S&P and Mrs. Dow Jones.
Getting down to close to session lows. The Dow is down about 540 points. Folks, it is the S&P that appears to be about to close in correction territory, down 76%. We will see what happens tomorrow.
But it's not like this should come as a surprise to anyone who paid attention and understands how tariffs work. This was inevitable. And listen, to be transparent, right? If Trump, during his campaign, stood in front of the world and said, hey, we're going to go the tariff route, it's going to cause a notable downturn in the market, which tariffs do, and people will feel it. But in the long term, it serves a purpose or whatever. Splash in some weaving and authoritarian dialogue and it will sound more like Trump. And if he said that, we can discuss it, right? But it's the fact that he promised time and time again that he'd bring costs down day one.
How does the White House measure this in terms of when can you not blame it on former President Biden and when does it fully become President Trump's responsibility?
Well, we've only been here for 52 days, but certainly the president is working hard every day to, again, bring down the cost of living, which we see is already happening. You see the cost of eggs is going down, cost of gasoline is going down because of the massive deregulatory efforts of this president, and also the fact that we are delivering on his promise to drill, baby, drill already. You saw this past weekend, the National Economic Advisory put out a report that because of the regulations we've already slashed in just 52 days, we've saved American taxpayers $180 billion. That comes out to about $2,000 per American household. That's in 52 days. So the president is working diligently and he's working hard on this every single day. And we need Congress to also help. We need Congress to pass tax cuts, which the president campaigned on and the vast majority of the American people support.
So when I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one. We will end Kamala's war on American energy, and we will drill, baby, drill. We're going to drill.
End inflation, day one. End the wars, day one. But here he is, just towing the Kremlin party line.
Well, would like to see a ceasefire from Russia. And we have, not been working in the dark. We've been discussing with Ukraine land and pieces of land that would be kept and lost and all of the other elements of a final agreement. There's a power plant involved, a very big power plant involved. Who's going to get the power plant and who's going to get this and that? And so, it's not an easy process. But phase one is the ceasefire. A lot of the individual subjects have been discussed, though. We've been discussing concepts of land because you don't want to waste time with a ceasefire if it's not going to mean anything. So we're saying, look, this is what you can get. This is what you can't get. They discussed NATO and being in NATO, and everybody knows what the answer to that is. They've known that answer for 40 years, in all fairness. So a lot of the details of a final agreement have actually been discussed. Now we're going to see whether or not Russia's there, and if they're not, it'll be a very disappointing moment for the world.
Spiking costs all over the place and sending the market into absolute freefall with no intention of slowing down. So hell yes, we're going to hold them to account for that.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.